Hi, welcome back to the next installment of the Health and Climate Change Lecture. The second pattern that I've noticed is life on Earth is on the move. You already know, I'm sure, about how people are having to move to different areas as sea level rises and destroys their communities. Just look at Louisiana, that's been happening there. Other causes of these human migrations are drought and flooding. Anyway, we're not the only ones. Mosquitoes are also on the move. Here's a projection published in 2020, and they were talking about two specific species of mosquito. And on the top row, you see it's for RCP 4.5. That's better than RCP 8.5 in terms of our greenhouse gas emissions. 4.5 means our greenhouse gas emissions peak around the year 2040 and then start to go down. Whereas with 8.5, our emissions continue to rise. If you look at the key there, you'll notice that red is for the year 2080, and then orange is for another year, not, again, in the future. I'm making this in December of 2025. All right. I want you to look at Utah. These are projections for Aedes aegypti. All right, so in 2025, that's this year, an invasive bug for thirst with a thirst for blood is spreading across southern Utah. It's Aedes aegypti. It's already there. And it's known for carrying human diseases like dengue fever, chikungunya, West Nile virus, yellow fever, Zika, and other deadly viruses. This is what it looks like. So it's already there, ahead of projections. Ticks and vampire bats are also on the move. In Canada, over the last few decades, black-legged ticks have been spreading north into new territory. Consequently, reported cases of Lyme disease have grown from about 150 cases in 2009 to over 2,000 cases in 2017. Lyme disease's expanding rage in Canada is driven in part by a warming climate that has allowed these ticks to invade new environments. And I want to stress the partly, because some scientists are saying, white-tailed deer, which these ticks like to be on white-tailed deer, that wildlife management in introducing white-tailed deer to new areas, trying to bring white-tailed deer back to where they used to be, is contributing to the spread of Lyme disease. So I do want to stress the in part by climate change. Okay, that's not the whole picture. Anyway, are you aware of the expanding reach of Lyme disease? Have you ever been told by a doctor, oh, we don't have Lyme disease here, only to find out later on that you do? If that's happened to you, you're not the only one. And there's a medical gaslighting thing that's going on around this. I'll talk about that in a minute. But first off, this map is about a study done by Johns Hopkins University. It was their School of Public Health and their School of Medicine Lyme Disease Research Center. They looked for where people are Googling for Lyme disease information, and they found this method is proving faster at discovering locations of risk than the old ways of waiting for a doctor to diagnose us. So here are the maps. This is the result. Do you notice the spread across these maps? So there you go. I promised you a little bit of information about medical gaslighting. This is not the doctor's fault. Doctors, depending on cases being diagnosed, it provides a lag time between reality and the cases that are walking in the door. They're just in the dark. Hopefully, Johns Hopkins is going to help with this. But if you've ever had the bullseye rash, or if you've had other signs and symptoms without the bullseye rash, which is possible, do your research, find out about Lyme disease in your area, and go to your doctor with that information, because your doctor quite sincerely may believe that Lyme disease is not in your area yet. Vampire bats are another one. These are a South American species of bat. They feed on blood, mainly livestock. But the problem with that is that they also carry rabies, and Texas health officials are concerned because this bat has been slowly moving north, and it's very close to the Texas border now. So to sum this up, animals are on the move, and they're bringing with them pathogens like dengue and other diseases carried by mosquitoes, Lyme disease carried by ticks. And we have animals that spread rabies already here in the United States, but we may be getting a new species to worry about with regard to the vampire bat. Do you garden? If you do, you've probably noticed already that your garden is getting warmer. Some plants that did well before are not doing as well as they used to. Here, you're not imagining things. The planting zones in the United States are shifting. That means plants are shifting in terms of where they can grow. Mobile, Alabama is going from an 8.B to 9.A. Los Angeles is going from a 10B to a planting zone 11A. And New York City is going from a 7B to an 8A. We in universities live on coffee, right? So I want to talk about Arabica coffee, which grows in moderate subtropical climates where the temperatures are constant between 60 degrees Fahrenheit and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. The best for this coffee plant are temperatures between 65 and 70. They're usually found at higher elevations near the equator, these plants. Colombia, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Indonesia will be least affected by climate change. That's the good news. But here's a map of Kenya, and you can see that even then they're losing areas of planting zones for Arabica coffee. They're expected to suffer a 1/3 decrease in coffee growing zones by 2050. The highest losses will be in hot, dry regions such as Brazil, parts of India, and Nicaragua. Areas that currently provide some of the highest yields of Arabica coffee are these areas. So those places are going to lose nearly 80% of their coffee planting growing zones by 2050. Oh, yeah. Anyway, so to sum up, plants growing zones are shifting. Fish are moving to colder waters. Other animals are on the move. Life on Earth is on the move or dying out. Now, I have a picture of fish there for a reason, because this leads us to the third pattern, which is the risk of food insecurity is growing up with climate change. Here's one example. Inuit food sources include walrus and Arctic char. A traditional Inuit delicacy is fermented walrus meat that's buried in the permafrost for months. Nowadays, when families go to collect their meat from underground, it's moldy because the permafrost is thawing and the ground is no longer cold enough to stop the meat from spoiling. The Arctic is warming faster than the rest of the world, with one study suggesting it's happening at nearly 4 times the global rate. The loss of sea ice that's happening as a result and the reduced snowfall are disrupting Inuit hunting patterns that have worked for centuries. Trusted routes are either no longer there or they're unsafe, and Inuit hunters are having to go further distances to find food. Bruno Tremblay, an Arctic scientist at McGill University, has also noted that fish are on the move. Just like I promised, this is that part. We're seeing Atlantic salmon, he says, where we used to have Arctic char. And Arctic char is more nutritious than salmon, and it also is more sustainable as a food source because it doesn't die out after spawning, whereas Atlantic salmon do. The walrus meat typically used is also highly nutritious. So this is one example of food insecurity that is causing problems. And I got that information from this article, Arctic Warming Continues to Threaten Inuit Traditions and Food Security, published in Arctic Today. Which leads me to the World Health Organization's projections. This was published in 2015, so present means the 10 years ago. And I want you to look at undernutrition. The red wedge means it's a risk. The orange red wedge part means that we have the ability to reduce risk to that level. In 2030, 2040, this is their projection for undernutrition. Do you notice how big it's gotten in terms of risk? And how we are trying to figure out ways to adapt, but it's not meeting the entire risk. And then in 2080 to 2100, it is the biggest health problem due to climate change. I had one student ask me in lecture once, what out of all the health problems that climate change is causing, which one is the most important? And I said heat, because undernutrition is happening because of a warming climate. The warming climate is what is calling, so undernutrition is fallout from that. Now, because I don't hate you, here is the entire graphic from the World Health Organization put together. I just wanted you to be able to see it enlarged. And here again are the undernutrition wedges. Another concern with regard to food insecurity, as I mentioned, droughts and floods are ruining crops and causing food shortages. Another problem is that as carbon dioxide goes up in our atmosphere, the nutrition of some of our foods is going down, the nutritional value. Here's one example. In rice, protein is going down by 10%, iron by 8%, zinc by 5%, and then you see vitamins B1, B2, B5, B9 all going down by a certain number of percent as a result of higher carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. So we've talked about the second pattern, which is life on Earth is on the move, which is feeding into, no pun intended, food insecurity. I also want to mention extreme weather events contributing to food insecurity. But one thing I haven't talked about is extinction. And what are we going to do when some of our food sources start to go extinct? The Inuit are facing that right now. Thank you so much. Hoping you found this helpful.